Hello, welcome to the Sitcoms podcast. How are you doing, Kenny?
I'm feeling fabulous today. Thank you for having me here, Lisa.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a joy. And you just told me that this is your first podcast. So I'm very honored.
Yes. Oh, the honor is mine too. Yeah.
So we are talking today about an amazing word. I love this word. It's one of my 6 C's of effective
Mm.
communication, which is curiosity. And we're talking about curiosity at work. So, first of all, let's dive straight in. How has curiosity played a role in your career growth? Can you share a time when following your curiosity maybe led to an opportunity that maybe was unexpected?
Well, that's an interesting question, Lisa. I mean, I never quite looked back at my career. Now that you ask me, I think my whole work life has been a series of adventures following my curiosity. Starting with my first in 1995, I think, first fresh out of college, I bumped into an old friend. He said, "Oh, so what did you study?" I said, "I did accounting and computing." So I said, "Go check out this company called Anderson Consulting. They do quite interesting work." That was it. So I checked out the company and ended up my first job as a management consultant. I had no idea what it was when I applied. Yeah. So that was my first. And then a few years later, I think 7 years later, in 2002, I got curious about what might my life be if I hadn't worked for a large global company, if I wasn't in consulting. That curiosity led me to also to kind of search inside a bit what else I want to do. I wanted to spend more time with my two young boys then. So, and that I left consulting and I started to pursue my dream and started a cafe with my wife. So that was my second adventure. That I think the third adventure that led me to my current work at Bridge is that around, I think, 2010 to 2009. Again, I bumped into an ex-colleague of mine who was also into coaching and said, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "What are you up to?" She said, "Yeah, I'm doing some work with this global company. Go check them out. They do quite deep work, right?" Oh, I said, I was curious, quite deep work. So that led me to where I am now at Breach. I've been here for 15 years and loving every day.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love how you just keep bumping into friends. You have a lot of friends, Kenny. That's what it's saying to me.
No, I think when someone tell me check this thing out, I tend to follow through. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's my way of exposing to something outside of my usual circle.
So following your curiosity, but through via people that you know. That's an
Yeah.
interesting route. Love that. And you've been in Bridge exactly the same time as I've been in Singapore because we
Wow.
arrived in 2009. Yeah,
Okay, about the same time. Yeah.
at the same time. So, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, like in the time that we've known each other, but and in different panel discussions. Today, it's really fast paced.
Hmm.
Technology is changing. The way that we work has really changed post COVID. I'd be interested, and I think our listeners would be interested to know from you what strategies have helped you navigate those changes? What's helped you stay adaptable and continuously learning?
Well, I mean, I've always been passionate about learning, and I devour books in library. If I walk into a library or a bookstore, it's like my buffet. I still love to read good old-fashioned books. So that's the first thing that I do. I think my earlier career exposure at Accenture had actually taught me to learn really fast. So as a management consultant, we often get to do things that we've never done before and yet appear as experts and knowledgeable, credible to our clients. And that's that really, it makes me read up very quickly, talk to people who have experience, asking for help wherever that's useful, especially those days without internet. Now you have AI and internet. So I would classify my learning in maybe three different buckets. What is essential for my job? So I take a more recent one during the pandemic where we on all our workshops are cancelled. The pivot to virtual was really important. If we don't move to virtual, there's no business. And I think I remembered, clients were using different platforms. And there's Zoom, there's Teams. One of our clients used Adobe Connect. I have no idea what that is. And I downloaded, signed up for a free trial over the weekend, learned how to do it. And on Monday morning, presented a proposal using a new platform that I've never used. And we won the deal. I think that's a benefit of learning fast. I think the second category is actually things that fit my interests. I have a lot of random interests. I love to ride. I have a big fascination with cats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my Instagram. So that's Instagram is my outlet for creating. So I do feed my interest on creating. The last bit is, as you can see from my career trajectory of following my curiosity, it's really open to random suggestion, really random. Read magazines that I don't normally read. I mean, I subscribe to HBR. Now I like New Yorker. New Yorker is a bit more interesting. And I follow Seth Godin's blog. He blogs every day. One of the things I often do in Singapore, the public library, there's a section of new books. I always go and pick up something there. And that new books, it forces me to go to an aisle that usually I just go to my usual aisle, right? Management, self-development. But that opened up my eyes to a lot of new things. So that's three things that I do.
I love it. Yeah. So just to recap, just learn fast and learn skills that are essential for your job. Follow your interests and you use Instagram as your outlet. I follow it and I would recommend listeners follow you too. There's some great wisdom in that, actually. And I love that third one, being open to random suggestions. I'm a big fan of the public libraries here. We're so lucky in Singapore to have such
Yeah.
fantastic libraries. So go down an aisle that you've never been, that you don't usually go to, and that will open your eyes to something new. Love that.
Well, you
Um,
summarized it very well, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am taking notes. So if you're watching this and wondering why I'm looking down, I am taking notes. I'm being a very active listener. So next question, in terms of learning and really unlearning, can you
Hmm.
think of a moment when unlearning something was just as important as learning something? And how did that
Ooh,
impact your approach to work? It's a meaty question, Kenny.
it's a meaty one. And I think as a lifelong learner, I'll call myself that. Yeah, I'm in my 55 this year and I'm still learning. I fully subscribe to the idea of learn, unlearn, and relearn stuff that. And I think let me start with a non-work example first, then how does it translate into work? So as a child, I have never taken formal swimming classes. I never learned how to swim freestyle or front crawl. But I managed to teach myself breaststroke. I think it's a survival thing. You get thrown in the water, you survive, you kick. And that served me well enough to take part in a sprint triathlon. But I was the last person who came out of the water. Breaststroke is really slow, right? But I think around 7, 50, I mean, when my son was 15, I mean, he's 27 now, he was learning to play the guitar through YouTube. And I said, okay, I gave myself a challenge. I am going to learn freestyle through YouTube. So I look up the YouTube, watch a video, listen to the lecture. I came across this concept called total immersion, which is a different way of swimming. Hit the pool every day and do the drills. I think what I had to unlearn, I mean, I swim breaststroke pretty okay. What I had to unlearn is everything I knew about swimming. I had to put that aside and follow the instructions. And I struggled. And really, on the first day, I struggled to finish a 15-meter lap. Really, it was hard work. But with practice and applying the new principles and all, I also managed to double the distance every day 1 to 2 to 4 to 8. And 8 to 16 is a big jump. But by the end of the 2 weeks, I was doing 20 laps nonstop, almost effortlessly. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, I can swim. And I think that hit me quite a bit in terms of the need to unlearn something that you're comfortable with so that you can't, right now, pick up the new stuff. And I remember the story about Tiger Woods. He had to unlearn his golf swing and to get him to the next level. So there's an old saying, like, what gets you here won't get you there. And so that's bad. And now that I've learned swimming, what I've learned in swimming is equally relevant to work. Okay, let me give examples. In immersion, total immersion, there are three basic principles to master. One was about balance. If you're balanced, you don't struggle to breathe, you don't struggle. And second was streamlining. So in water, we need to be as hydrodynamic as possible. So minimize the kick. The kick actually creates more kind of a drag. The third bit was in propulsion, right? And most of the propulsion in freestyle comes from the arms, not the legs. So if you see swimmers are kicking frantically, that's not very efficient. So it's a lot of science, physics behind that. And I applied that and got me through. So when the pandemic hit, And I was doing laps in the pool, and I got this idea of a three-part strategy to approach business recovery, same as what I did learn from swimming. Right. First was to stabilize the business or the clients, make sure the clients are taken care of. They're not left in a lurch, which is the same as stabilize the body when I swim. Second was to optimize the team. How do we reskill? How do we reallocate resources and stay, focused, which is the same as streamlining. How do we cut some of the unnecessary activities? And the last bit is actualize our collective potential. In swimming, it's propulsion, right? How do you move forward? And that kind of served as well as we climb out of COVID. I think that's an example of how unlearning and relearning and also find things that relevant from non-work to work.
I love that. God, there's so much value in that. I love the analogy. So I noted down just like that 3-point, would you call it an approach or a framework that you came up with using the swimming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's three basic principles or basic principles. Yeah.
Basic principles. So stabilize the business, look after the clients that you already have, optimize your team, and then actualize our collective potential.
Right.
It's great. That could be a book, Kenny. I love the fact, I just want to honour that, what you just said, that it was, am I right in saying it was 2 weeks of watching YouTube that you were able to learn front crawl?
Yes, but it's 2 weeks of hitting the pool every day.
2 weeks daily hitting the pool?
Daily, yeah.
For how long?
For about an hour.
Hour? That's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think listeners are going to be impressed by that. I certainly am. That's amazing. It just made me think of how my husband learned. He grew up in a Moroccan village. And when you said, oh, you didn't have any formal swimming lessons, of course he didn't. They had no idea about formal swimming lessons. So his older brother, just one day when they were out, they live in the depths of the countryside, just pushed him into the river. And that's how he learned.
Sink or swim.
Like, go to old school, sink or swim.
Yes. He survives, so I think he learned.
Survives, and he can swim now. Not great, but he can swim. So what do you think then, turning to like an organisational level, what do you think organisations can do to foster that really great culture of curiosity? And as you have explained in your examples, that learning agility that we all need now among their teams. How can we foster that?
I mean, I think hard on this. I mean, curiosity is a very personal thing. To make it as a organizational culture, it's a different kind of ball game. I think one of the first thing is being comfortable with not knowing. In other words, an organization needs to celebrate or value questions more than answers. And we don't know yet. It's like one of those growth mindset. We don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. As opposed to we need to have an answer as soon as we can. So that not knowing is uncomfortable, but it is essential if you want to explore curiosity. But the same thing, if you're not curious, you jump to judgment and conclusion very quickly. If you're curious, you can understand, oh, why are people doing what they do? Why is things working this way and not working the other way? And the second bit is it's really asking questions, but not just asking questions, but asking deeper and better questions. I mean, the what if question is a good one. What if? I mean, it's a good way to self-destruct ourselves. And I wish we could ask the question earlier on, what if companies banned travel? We can't fly people around anymore. How do we deliver our work? Or what if pandemic hits again in a different way? I mean, we all know about AI is evolving very quickly. And what if AI really make our current work irrelevant? Which is a very real thing that most of us are faced with. So ask really deep questions. Things like how might we? I know design thinking, you said a lot. I think how might we opens up to a lot of possibilities. Maybe, as opposed to how could we, right? Why not? And the two other questions that I really love is what are we not seeing? Because I think that opens up our eyes to what we are blind to. What are we not seeing? And one last one was, I think, what would the outsider do? Did that get us out of our worldview? Right? It's like asking what would a 5-year-old say or do? Yeah. Or what would someone who have zero experience of what we do, how would they approach this differently? And then we can start with a beginner's mind. Yeah. And then the last bit, asking question is the important, embracing not knowing allows us to ask good and deep,
Mm.
better questions. But the last bit is really about acting on them. It's how do we embrace the idea of experimenting to discover and learn as opposed to achieve? So we don't have to plot the entire journey knowing where we're going to go, but we know we are heading this direction. And when we experiment, sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed. Right? But the whole point is to learn. What are we learning from an experiment? And a lot of people talk about celebrating failure, but I think it's more important to celebrate learning from failure as opposed to the failure itself. And that comes with experiment. Yeah. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. I love those questions that you're sharing with us. My personal favorite is the how might we, because I love the appreciative inquiry approach, and that's very strengths based. And
Yeah.
so it just opens up, it empowers. Actually, I had a guest on the other day, and she's a psychologist and she adopts the solution focused approach. And that's very similar to appreciative. It's a how might we, what's the best thinking? Yeah.
Yeah.
The clue is in the name. It's solution focused rather than problem focused.
Yeah. Oh, I love solution focus. There is a miracle questions that
The
you
miracle
ask.
questions. Yeah,
Yeah,
she
right. And
mentioned that.
you
Yeah.
wake up the next morning and the world has been different. And what did you notice? And that really puts us in a different frame of mind.
It's beautiful. I love that. So, yeah, value questions rather than always having the answer, embracing the unknown. Of course, this is always easier said than done, depending on the day and the mood. But this is like the ultimate. Yeah, this is a good target to have. Yeah, I love those other questions that you mentioned. What are we not seeing? And what would an outsider say? Because I think we do get very confined to our own environment. I
Yeah.
definitely felt that when I worked in organization before. So somebody that I also follow that listeners might be interested in is the Squiggly Career podcast.
Yeah.
And they talk about meerkat moments where you just
Um,
take time to pop your head up and
mhm,
out from the
mhm.
organization that you're working in to see what other people are doing in other practices. So that's what I did with when I worked before for organization. I used to pop up and out quite often, see
What
what
did
other
you find
people
when you
were
pop
doing.
up?
Oh, it was
What
quite
did you find?
illuminating. But also the other part of that is to come back to your team, do your meerkat
Right.
moment, come back to the team and then share it and teach it.
That's a great idea. I love that meerkat thing. Yeah.
Yeah, meerkat moments. That's what came to mind when you were sharing. So we're getting on to the practical tips. There's been loads of wisdom already, but I just want to get you to share with us 3 tips for someone who might feel a bit stuck in their current role, wants to reignite that curiosity and that passion for learning. That, let's be honest, there are ups and downs. It does
Hmm.
tend to dwindle sometimes. But what would be your 3 kind of go-to tips for those people?
Okay. Well, feeling stuck is not a good feeling,
No.
but I guess in our career, there are moments that we all feel that way. I would say, yeah, by now you realize that I love the idea of 3 things, right? The first thing is actually look inward. Look inward to see what brings you the most joy and when do you feel most alive? And I get stuck. I mean, during pandemic, there's a bit of, okay, what else do we do now, right? And I looked inwards, I discovered that writing brings me alive. I used to write. I love to write. I used to blog. And then that got me into writing and I found a half-finished manuscript. I said, why don't I just finish it? So I finished it. It's called Let's Hack Learning, which I publish on my blog site, not a formal book. It's a short book about let's hack learning and which I use of my swimming, how I hack swimming as a way. But also I shared some principles around that. So that brings 2 things, right? The learning and the writing are both my kind of what brings me alive. And I remembered the whole idea of press publish was quite a feeling, like the feeling, oh, I'm going to put this out there and how do I feel about it and how do people respond? But I realized that it's the gift of finishing something. There is a good feeling about that. So looking inwards, see what brings you alive, because sometimes we have forgotten them as we go through our workday. It is a bit like the meerkat moment. It's to look outward and see what's new out there. What is emerging or wanting to emerge? We don't really see it clearly yet. Scan the world of what might interest you. It could be AI, DE, and I, all those things. It could be some other things. It could be, I mean, depends on the age. It could be how to live healthily, right? How to have a longer, better health span as opposed to lifespan. And scan the world. And the last bit I think it's more about people. Expand your circle. When we are stuck in our role, again, we're caught in one view of the world. Expand your circle, get out there, talk to different people, take a different route, not just a path less traveled, just a different path. Is it good enough?
Yeah.
You might meet different people and speak to people outside of your usual circle again. And that's where you expand your circle of, I think, inspiration. Listen to different podcasts.
Mm.
And I think what's important is as we do all that, look inward, look outward, expand the circle, is to really stay open to serendipity, stay open to some random stimulus. Again, that's the whole idea of following your curiosity. How to reignite your passion with curiosity. It is about true curiosity.
I love that. That's so good. So inward, outward, expand your circle. Inward, outward, expand your circle. I can remember that. That's great. I love it. Such nuggets. Thank you so much. There's one last question before you go that I
Mhm.
ask every guest, and that's to do with the 6 C's of effective communication, which is the founding framework for Six Comms, my business.
Yeah, I remember
We've
that's your first broadcast.
Yeah, that's my first. We've talked a lot about curiosity, but there are
Hmm.
5 more. So they
Right.
are connection,
Hmm.
compassion, clarity, customization, and consistency. Which one, I'm going to press you for one other C, is
Right.
resonating most with you now and why? And perhaps how does that connect with the topic we've been discussing today?
Okay. Other than curiosity, of course.
Yeah.
I think the one that's closest to my heart is clarity. Clarity of thoughts, clarity of what we are seeing. How do we see the world more clearly, as opposed to being blinded by our own judgments and
Mm.
prejudice or biases? The clarity of communication. Like I say I love to write, so I do read up a lot in terms of how to write more clearly. Yeah. Yeah.
Clarity. I love
I
that.
think it all begins with clarity of thoughts, right?
Mm.
If you think clearly, and it's vice versa, right? I realize when you write, it helps you to clarify your thinking as
Mm.
well. Putting thoughts into words allows us to kind of look at it from outside as opposed to thinking from the inside.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, definitely. So clarity it is then. And thank you for your clarity in sharing your tips and your wisdom and your stories and your examples. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I mean, I had a great fun with you, Lisa. Thank you for having me on the show.
Pleasure.